Great. So for those who aren't aware who this wonderful bhikkhuni is, sitting next to me, she is Venerable Upekkhā. I almost told your nicknames. Because she said I can introduce her any way I wish. So otherwise known as Ven U, Ven Up, Ven Ups, Ven, what else?
Upekkhā, I think.
Upekkhā. But Venerable Upekkhā is lovely because it means equipoise, or in Ajahn Brahm's translation, contentment. And it's lovely to have you here. And not only is Venerable Upekkhā a very long-term friend, she's also very supportive to me here. She's come to serve and look after me and help with some of the things like venue searches and whatever, really, but just someone to look out, you know, so we look out for each other. And you'll be here for 4 months.
4 months.
Yay! Probably not 4 anymore, but yeah, you're still at the start of the trip. So hopefully she'll be sharing some of her own wisdom as well, and you can ask questions to the both of us. If you have anything for her specifically, you can ask her. I think Ellen's met you. He's the one that said, oh yeah, the really skinny Sri Lankan nun who's like 25 or so. She's older than me. 1 year older. And I'm not 25 or even 35. So, or even 45. Anyway, we better be proper. So let's be proper and begin. Are you going to start since you're holding the book?
Okay.
Would you like to?
Okay.
Last week we did our record Sutta discussion. On this much Sutta, we talked about stream entry for a whole hour and 15 minutes. So this week we'll try to do a little more. And feel free to comment at the end of each part, and feel free to ask questions and raise your hands. We'll also give you a cue to do that as well. So.
Okay, so just to introduce those who don't know, we're reading from this, it's an anthology written by Bhikkhu Bodhi on social and communal harmony. So it's relevant to all of us, whether we're monastics or whether we live at home with a family. Living in harmony is part of our everyday existence. So it's relevant. And this is a chapter on the intentional community. The intentional community being a community that, like the Sangha, that we come together on our own voluntarily, as opposed to being born to a family. Maybe that's also voluntary to some degree. I don't know. Yes. My mother always said, you chose us, you know.
And on the other hand, none of it's choice.
Yeah. Then she gets annoyed with us. Okay, so this is the sutta called The Unrighteous and the Righteous. Monks, there are these 2 kinds of communities. What 2? The unrighteous community and the righteous community. And what is the unrighteous community? Here, in the community, disciplinary acts contrary to the Dhamma are enacted, and disciplinary acts in accordance with the Dhamma are not enacted. Disciplinary acts contrary to the discipline are enacted, and disciplinary acts in accordance with the discipline are not enacted. Disciplinary acts contrary to the Dhamma are put forth, and disciplinary acts in accordance with the Dhamma are not put forward. Disciplinary acts contrary to the discipline are put forward, and disciplinary acts in accordance with the discipline are not put forward. This is called the unrighteous community. it is because it is unrighteous that in this community disciplinary acts contrary to the Dhamma are enacted. And a repetition of the whole paragraph again. And disciplinary acts in accordance with the discipline are not put forward. So we'll just pause there, and well, you're probably wondering what disciplinary acts are. Probably you can guess what disciplinary acts are, but especially as a member of the Sangha, we are bound by our rules of conduct, and well, they're not always easy to keep. It's sometimes easy just to kind of fudge this way and fudge that way, and after a while you've fudged a little bit too much, and then you've gone quite a bit off track.
Like a ball of fudge.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to happen because you go, oh well, it doesn't matter, this doesn't matter, or I'm just, it's just nobody, it's not such a big deal. Easy to say that. And eventually you become a community. You meet other people who are also like-minded, or you join a community that's like-minded, and before you know what, you've all started not following the Vinaya. It's an easy thing to happen. So the Buddha points this out specifically, that following these disciplinary acts, following the Vinaya, is an important part of being a member of the Sangha. And I'm sure you also notice when you meet a Sangha member who is, you kind of go, oh, I just don't feel good about this person. You kind of go like, they're dressed in robes, but, you just don't feel good. So, there are a lot of bogus monks in India, for example, begging.
And London too.
Oh.
I remember my friend Rita. Does anybody remember Rita? She was a very key member of our community from the beginning, and she met these monks in London that were basically asking for money and trying to sell give their card and basically ask for money. And she was really upset and told them so.
Right.
And the Buddha actually advised that, for the lay people to give that critical feedback to keep us in check. And she told him, this is not proper for a monk. I think it was more than just using money. It was like really kind of trying to get money off her and sell her some kind of fake kind of little Buddha thing, amulet or something. Yeah.
So I'll finish the thing,
yeah,
and then we can have a discussion. You can guess what the rest of it is anyway. And what is the righteous community? Here, in the community, disciplinary acts that accord with the Dhamma are enacted, and disciplinary acts contrary to the Dhamma are not enacted. Disciplinary acts that accord with the discipline are enacted, and disciplinary acts contrary to the discipline are not enacted. Disciplinary acts that accord with the Dhamma are put forward, and disciplinary acts contrary to the Dhamma are not put forward. Disciplinary acts that accord with the discipline are put forward, and disciplinary acts contrary to the discipline are not put forward. This is called the righteous community. It is because it is righteous that in this community, disciplinary acts that accord with the Dhamma are enacted, etc., etc., and disciplinary acts contrary to the discipline are not put forward. These are the two kinds of communities. of these two kinds of communities, the righteous community is foremost. So, Venerable Canda, did you have anything to say?
One of the things that came to mind, just thinking from a non-Sangha perspective, is that this would hold true for lay people as well. You know, any community where people are living basically good ethical lives, people are speaking correctly, truthfully, kindly, wisely, being as honest as they can and as transparent as they can, or, you know, people who live in communities where there may be maybe communities that come together for shorter times. It's the intentional community, right? So say on a meditation retreat, one of the reasons it works so well is that everybody takes precepts for that time, especially the precept not to speak, which is very helpful because most of our misconduct comes through speech. But at that time, people are living celibate and they are, you know, eating only what's offered. So it becomes very peaceful and very harmonious at that time to practice deeply. So in a sense, you know, this is something that we should all be looking for in our lives, whether or not we're in the Sangha, that we associate again with people who hold good virtue, and ideally virtue at least as good as our own, so we have something to look up to. Look, Eric is here. Hi. I just want to say hi to Derek too, because he's here as well. I'm very happy. So, and the other really interesting thing that struck me is that last week we talked about the noble and the ignoble community, and we got into this whole big discussion about stream entry and what it is and this and that. And it's almost as though the second excerpt here about the righteous and unrighteous is like almost kind of a guideline as to how these communities become communities of noble people or not, right? So it's a training. There's a discipline there. I mean, the word translated there's Vinaya. I kind of like more the word something like restraint, or I mean, Vinaya actually literally means restraint. It's again a training, right? It's not that you either are disciplined or you're not. It's a constant kind of refinement of our conduct. So in that sense, it's giving a very clear path to actually grow and mature as a community, so that we do become like a community of righteous people and a community of noble people. The word righteous is also a bit tricky, I find, to listen to, because it's just from it. I don't know about other people's conditioning, but from my conditioning, it sounds very up yourself, you know, like I'm a righteous person, like pious, you know, it's got the same sort of connotation. But really what it means is kind of but virtuous, right? Doing acts that do not harm yourself or others, and restraining from acts that do.
Pali word.
I think Vinaya. Yeah. Oh, you mean for righteous?
Yeah, for righteous. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe anyone here can do a quick search.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing that struck me was these are, you know, we see noble people and people who are, you know, we go, wow. But this is something that's so tangible. It's something that we can do.
Right.
You know, it's not some highfalutin, you know, state of meditation. This is something that is very, you know, how did I speak? How did I, you know?
Yeah, like in other words, it's not even about whether the person is noble or not, because we don't know, right? But it's more about, is the speech something that would be praised by the noble? Is the speech noble? Is the speech virtuous?
Right.
And then we become,
yes.
It's like that makes
exactly.
Because there's no person that becomes noble, but it's like the action, the verbal action, mental action, physical action is what's noble, rather than any being doing that. So yeah, that's really good. And also that if it's a measure, isn't it, to check whether somebody is actually you know, a noble being. I mean, of course, it's not enough of a check. And again, you can't really know, and it's not really the point to speculate. I wouldn't really go there too much. But what you should do is beware of teachers who don't keep their virtue really, really strong. You know, at least the 5 precepts, absolute minimum. you know, and obviously as a Sangha member, there are other really, really important things to keep, like the celibacy. Yes, that's absolutely fundamental. Not kind of, I mean, some monks and nuns in some traditions do use money, but they shouldn't be like hoarding money or like earning money and like becoming rich, or say avoiding taxes, because I have heard there are groups of monks in Thailand who do just that, and these are Theravada monks, and they don't want to pay taxes on their savings, and they go down to the basement in the monastery. I've heard this in some monasteries, and they're counting their money in the evenings, and that's really gross. That's really, really gross, especially when they become wealthier than those who support them. So to be, you know, very careful and respectful of the dana that comes in. Yeah, so to, you know, a person is defined by their actions more than by their speech or what they say or what they know.
And you feel it. And you feel it.
Oh yeah, you feel it. Now you feel like relaxed.
Yeah.
And you feel, this person might not be perfect, but I can trust them to be honest. I can trust them to be like transparent. You know, it doesn't mean, I mean, the Vinaya, this is one of the reasons I don't quite like it being called discipline. The Vinaya is more a system of checks and balances. It's more a system whereby we can come together and be open about our conduct and say, okay, this particular rule, this particular training, I didn't do well this time. This last 2 weeks, you know, I didn't do well with that. So then you're aware and you tell the other community members, and they say, okay, try better next time. And it's just like an encouragement. There's no punishment for that, unless it's a, you know, quite a serious offense that anybody would think was, you know, a bit dodgy. The smaller things are just things to establish more mindfulness around and to be very transparent about. So that is following the Vinaya. To my mind, it's not about never making mistakes. It's about having the proper reparation, the proper system of disclosure and reparation in the community. Yeah, the word disciplinary gives me associations towards fear of punishment, exactly, rather than personal choice and intention made from wisdom. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, I really dislike that word, actually, the way it's being used.
If anybody feels like Googling the Pali, it would be helpful.
Discipline must be just Vinaya, I think.
Sama.
Righteous is Sama. This is discipline.
Oh, but righteous is Sama.
Okay. That's strange. Sama. It's more like balance, isn't it? Interesting. Unrighteous is Visama. Okay. Sort of out of line with harmony, I guess. Literally something. But discipline, that's a different word. And that is disciplinary, I think, is a really bad translation, personally.
No, not some as in wholesome.
We're talking about two different words here.
Yeah, they put a double in.
No.
Yeah.
But I just want to speak to the disciplinary thing. If I could just speak to that a bit more, because what does it say? Disciplinary acts contrary to the Vinaya. Yeah. I would imagine it's a word related to Vinaya. And as I say, Vinaya really means kind of restraint, and it's a voluntary undertaking. I mean, even the word restraint is slightly strange, because I consider it more like governing. I really like the word governing the senses, for example, or guarding the senses. So it's kind of something internal that kind of looks over our conduct with mindfulness and knows when the conduct is moving towards unwholesome states and when the conduct is more wholesome. And you know that through experience and through a lot of mindfulness and practice. And there's almost like an inbuilt mechanism in the human being, I think, to move away from that makes us suffer. So when we actually know that this particular way that I'm thinking or behaving is hurting me and it's hurting others, we have a natural sense of like restraint. So in that sense, it is more like an intention made with wisdom. You know, the wisdom is into the suffering there and to what, you know, moves us away from suffering. So I mean, in the Vinaya, there's no punishment as such. There's just particular things you have to do if you've really transgressed some of the major rules. You know, for a couple of weeks, you might have to walk at the back of the queue, for example, and you can't come to the Patimokkha, isn't it? Until you...
Well, you've also got to confess in front of...
You've got to confess.
20 bhikkhus.
Yeah.
20 bhikkhus.
I even the word confess I find tricky. That and sometimes you have to relinquish something. Say if you've stolen something. I mean, they're quite gross things, right? They're quite obvious things. But yeah, I'd agree with that. The translation doesn't feel very inspiring. I agree. So did you want to speak to this summer thing? I think
yeah. I have to look at... I am not familiar with the word summer. So
I think it's something like balance, summer. Something like, sure. So Grace here has a question. So if you could speak up as much as possible.
Yeah. So I'm wondering about some, like a sort of practical question of like caring for the body, and like an example of if you're not able to eat until like a half hour after you're supposed to cut off food for the day, something like that example, if it creates disharmony within your sort of whole body mind system, and then it kind of, if those sorts of things happen over time, it can build resentment within yourself, which is disintegrating and disharmonizing. So how do you work with that with the Vinaya?
Yeah. So as many people might know, I actually have stomach issues myself. So for me, it's absolutely fundamentally important to eat the right food, and to eat, I have to have some oats in the evening for my tummy, and it's considered a medicine. I mean, the Sangha know about it, the teachers and the mentors that I have know about it, the communities that I've joined agree to it, and it's considered like an allowable medicinal requisite. So in the same way, if my food was going to be late and I knew that I was going to get really sick and that wouldn't be kind to my body and it would affect my health, then simple, I would just eat anyway. I mean, I would try to always at least begin before the so-called cutoff, but there is no cutoff as such in the sky. I mean, in the Buddha's day, they would use the solar noon. So I don't think that they looked up and the clock said, 1 minute past 12, or, it was solar noon, as in eat in the middle of the day before the sun starts, moving down, for the sake of health and for the sake of not inconveniencing the lay people. And I actually think it's really not inspiring if monastics are really rigid. For example, forget who it was, but it was a bhikkhuni actually, but anyway, never mind who it was. It's a long time ago, and apparently she went to a restaurant or something, or it might have even been a temple, and people were cooking a lot of food for her and taking a long time about it and really putting so much effort in. And when she got there, it was after 12, and the way she described it was horrible, because she was actually criticizing them for being upset that it was after 12 and that she didn't eat it. She decided not to eat it, and then she criticized them for not understanding her rules and for actually being upset about that. And they should know. And I just found it awful, honestly, because all that goodness from people's hearts and all that care, I mean, I would have just eaten it. And I know that my teachers who are wise would do the same. I mean, it's not out of greed, it's out of kindness, and kindness has to come first. So look, these Vinaya rules are about basically kind of trying to live in a way that is easy on the lay people, that's like, curbing greed, curbing hate and delusion. But they're not supposed to be like, this overrides your wisdom and your compassion. This is kind of set in stone and you don't need to think. We should always think. We should always ask ourselves, what is the purpose of this? And otherwise there's no training there. To me, there's no training to look at a rule book and just to follow it like a robot. For me, the training is understanding how it applies. And it's helpful to have teachers you can talk to, and that some might be more on the strict side, but some might be more on the way you think, or your thinking can be tempered by the way they practice. So it's also a way to choose the people that mentor you. It has to resonate. And generally as an observation, I've noticed that it's the younger monastics who are more rigid. And it's the more mature monastics who are less rigid, because I think they have a more mature sense of inner virtue and ethics, and they use their inner wisdom as a guide rather than just it says this. The first rule actually in the Pachityas, which are the small wills to be acknowledged, let's say, is not to eat garlic. Well, that'd work great for me if that was actually followed, because I'm allergic to garlic, but everyone eats garlic and nobody worries about that one. So Ajahn Brahm made a nice distinction to me, and I don't know if this is really for public, but I think it's okay, that there's a difference in the Vinaya between the rules that are panyati and that are ethical. Panyati is like convention. So monastic convention, like not eating after 12, would fall into that. And there's rules that are ethical, and they're defined as things that every human being knows are harmful. So there are some that are not actually overtly unethical, but still you undertake it as a training as a monastic. So you try to work within that framework for good, and then you learn why as you go. Does that make sense? Yeah. Does that make sense to other people? Are there any questions, disagreements, comments? I'll just try and go through the comments here as well, because I don't want to miss anything. So back to the one around righteous. Simply being more aware and knowing it isn't feeling right. So that was a reflection on, what I was saying about, like, you kind of know if you're doing something harmful. So exactly. Knowing it isn't feeling right, but be careful as well, because we do have sometimes a lot of subjectivity around that, and sometimes something might feel right to us, but it still might harm other people. So the wiser we get, the more confidence we can have in that, I'd say. When I was listening to the reading, my mind went to living on the Eightfold Noble Path, the second part of the reading, of course. So if a person is, say, diabetic, they can eat as their blood sugar dictates. Look, every Sangha is independent. So every community makes their own decisions around how exactly the Vinaya is followed in a particular place. You'll find communities that will be stricter and that might have issues with that, maybe in more traditional conservative countries, or not always. And there'll be others which might make allowances. I think from my perspective, I'd look at a candidate as a whole. Like, say if you wanted to train somebody and they might have this sort of problem and they would wonder about it, I'd kind of look at the whole picture, of that person. So, so there might be some health issues, but there might be a lot of strengths in other areas. And you look at them in terms of, can you actually support them to live a beneficial monastic life? So you couldn't necessarily say, well, I'll have a community where everybody has medical issues and has to eat after 12, but I think allowances and exceptions can be made when they're when they're called for. So there is a nun in Perth, isn't there? Venerable Canica's diabetic, right? And she has some stuff, doesn't she?
Only when she needs.
When she needs to. And I guess what it is trying to keep it as simple as you can. So not saying, well, I'm diabetic, that means I can eat a big meal whenever I want. And, but you try to kind of be really honest. Like, for example, with my oats, I could say, well, that means I can just have fish and chips, or because that's what's there. But I found a solution that's really simple, and it's really not something that's tasty. I might have salt or something, but it's like oats soaked in water. It's and I eat the minimum that I need, and I do it myself. I don't bother anyone, so it doesn't create disturbance or burden on the lay community. I think it's cheap too, cheaper than chocolate and cheese is my argument, because that's what most monastics eat, even without any sickness. In fact, that's bound to make you sicker. So I think it's fine. So okay, so now we have Bhante Sujato's translation here. Has the Pali after each section. That's great. I'm probably not going to look at it now, but that's great. Thank you very much. I know I've got some of your Sutta adepts in this group. Do you want to read this one? and
Okay,
comment?
that kind of ties back to the conversation on the fetters, especially being too attached to rites and rituals. Yeah, it's a human tendency because we like to define ourselves. So an easy way to define ourselves is by putting ourselves in a box of now I have done all these things, therefore I am a good nun because I followed all these rules.
Too easy.
Yeah. Ticked all the boxes, therefore I am safe. But it's
not enough.
Yeah. So
I remember one time somebody shouting at me, like really shouting in my face. And then we had the Patimokkha, and I thought they're going to have to, they're surely going to say something, right? But there's no actual rule to say do not shout in someone's face. So they didn't confess anything. And I thought, that's interesting. So unless it's there, it's not something to look at. But actually, if you read it more closely, there's many things that it could fit under, such as disrespect is a act to be confessed. So I think it's more nuanced and more refined than the black and white rules. I think we have to be super honest, because if you do, that's the danger, isn't it? In just relying on the literal sentence.
Yeah. But this is all
and
you
the feeling
grow.
pious.
You grow and you learn. Everybody starts with keeping all the rules, ticking all the boxes, because that's what that's all you know.
Yeah, which is true here, right? Because it's a certain stage on the path, right? When you actually don't put that stock in rites and rituals to actually have the power to liberate. And I guess that's another reason that people who are wiser, they're not so nitpicky, and they're kind of
they know where to draw the line.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so Sujata also said righteous. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it has baggage. It doesn't mean it's a bad word. It just has baggage. But I don't like the word myself either. Righteous. I mean, I think that's a real turn off for most people who might anyway look at monastics and think they're better than us. My mom would really not like to hear that word, and they're very good people. But it's like, we're righteous and they're not righteous. I mean, it doesn't work for me.
So I like looking at the Pali and the etymology. You get a better sense for what is meant rather than just the English.
We just don't have it right now.
Or
we don't. Righteous was the sama thing, right? It means a kind of balance and harmony, sama, as far as I know, a kind of like evenness. Visama would be like something out of balance, something kind of out of kilter. Yeah. Fabrizio's here, who was there last night in the Italian group. Hello, Fabrizio.
Just and
unjust. Very strange. Yeah, for me that's even more obscure, honestly. Should we do the next part? If there's nothing more. Have we invited people to raise their hands as much as you wish to raise your hands? Anyone? I think most of it's in the comments. Let's move on. Would you like to read? Or?
Yeah, I can read.
Don't mind.
Okay. So the next one is called How Beings Come Together and Unite. Monks, it is by way of elements that beings come together and unite. Those of low disposition come together and unite, while those of a low and unite with those of a low disposition. In the past they do so, in the future they will do so, and now at present they do so too. Just as excrement comes together and unites with excrement, urine with urine, spittle with spittle, pus with pus, and blood with blood, so too it is by way of elements that beings come together and unite. Those of a low disposition come together and unite with those of a low disposition. In the past they did so, in the future they did so, and now at present they do so too. monks. It is by way of elements that beings come together and unite. Those of a good disposition come together and unite with those of a good disposition. In the past they did so, in the future they will do so, and now at present they do so too. Just as milk comes together and unites with milk, oil with oil, ghee with ghee, honey with honey, and molasses with molasses, so too, monks, it is by way of elements that beings come together and unite. Those of a good disposition come together and unite with those of a good disposition. In the past they did so, in the future they will do so, and now at present they do so too. Wow.
You eat that in the evenings. Ghee, honey. So that must be you. It means you get who you deserve to be around. Does it or not? Maybe not.
Yeah. So that's very interesting, because we do gravitate towards like-minded people. You meet a like-minded, and go, oh, that's my type. Like when with Chandra and me.
Yeah. You're a bit Indian style.
Yes.
We both have a very long Indian connection.
So you like that. You like people who are like you.
Yeah.
But that, that is good. But also, I guess we always meet people who are not like us, whether you live with them or not. There's always someone who is not your equal. So the question is, do you become like them?
Or can you pull them up?
Or they become like you?
Vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely influence one another.
Yeah. So,
or we can, I guess, if we have really great guarding of the senses, we can just become like their good parts. We can just tune into their good parts, because everyone has them, right? And by doing that, that will help their good parts to grow, and also we'll get influenced by that. And the other ones we can just kind of ignore or just accept, but don't buy into. Don't kind of feed. But sometimes, I mean, obviously we're going to be around all kinds of people, and I don't think there's necessarily a good or a better, or we're all flawed in some ways, but at the same time, if it's someone who is kind of not trustworthy, or someone who just makes you feel miserable, or even is abusive, then at some point it's important to actually change the situation, change your friendships, maybe change your relationship, because that'll be far easier to grow. I think the Buddha said, didn't he, that if your own qualities are kind of going down, then maybe that place is not good for you. But if you go to a place and your good qualities start increasing, the wholesome states increase, then stay. Even if the teacher throws you out, stay. Even if they ask you to leave, just don't. So sometimes people are like, how come you get all this time with Ajahn Brahm? Well, they don't say it, but I think sometimes people might wonder. And it's like, because I'm really stubborn, it's like I'm determined to learn from him, So I mean, if I'm going to meet a good teacher, and I know how rare that is in the world and in lifetimes, then I'm going to stick around. And this is what it takes. Then I'll start a monastery in Oxford. Okay. I mean, it's kind of true. People are like, why did you start? Oh, it must be because you wanted to. No, I wanted to live with my teacher first in Burma, and then I got sick. Then I wanted to stay in Australia. I've been trying that for the last 12, 13, 14 years. But this was another way to have the guidance in a way that's very challenging, to do something I don't at all want to do, and it's a very big challenge. I say don't at all want. I mean, the small ego thing doesn't want. It's a service. It's something that's a sacrifice, and something that's a good thing to do, an opportunity I've been given. But it's mainly to have that influence in my life and to be taught in my life in an ongoing way. That's really what it is. So sometimes I feel like, oh, it's a shame we don't talk as much about meditation, obviously, as when I'm on retreat. we talk about the business things, but in that also there's a lot of guidance that comes from a Dhamma perspective. So yeah, anyway, that was kind of tangential, but just to say it's good to, you know, try and stick with people who are in some way have some qualities that you look up to. You know, try and stick and seek them out and keep coming to the Sutta classes, for example. And any other kind of classes, you know, any other situations where you can have that uplift and something to elevate the mind. Yeah. Anything from the group around people coming together? It's kind of straightforward, so maybe we can continue. Do you want me to read one?
Okay.
I don't mind if you do. But,
Okay.
but I can.
Elements, yeah.
Oh, is this more of the same?
Like a track slide.
Okay, so this is elaborated. I don't have such a beautiful voice as Venerable Upekkhā, but I'll do my best. So I'm not going to say monks, I'm going to say community. Like attracts like. So, community. It is by way of elements that beings come together and unite. This is more detail. Those lacking faith come together and unite with those lacking faith. I feel like saying something cheeky, like secular Buddhists. It's true. They go for other secular Buddhists. They have some faith, but not full faith. The shameless with the shameless, because they're not going to pull you up. Those unafraid of wrongdoing with those unafraid of wrongdoing. The learned with the unlearned. Sorry, the unlearned with the unlearned. The lazy with the lazy. The muddle-minded with the muddle-minded. The unwise with the unwise. In the past it was so, in the future it will be so, and now at present it is so. Community, it is by way of elements that beings come together and unite. Those having faith come together and unite with those having faith. Those having a sense of, I would say, moral caution, unite with those having a sense of moral caution. The translation is shame, but I like moral caution for Otapo, isn't it? Those afraid of wrongdoing with those afraid of wrongdoing. The learned with the learned, the energetic with the energetic, the mindful with the mindful, and the wise with the wise. In the past it was so, in the future it will be so, and now too at present it is so. So this is really human nature, right? To just kind of stay. I think it's speaking to me not only of, you know, just naturally gravitating towards people that are like us, but some of the motive for that is that we actually don't want to change, perhaps, you know, especially in the case of like those lacking faith, like the negative sides. You know, if you're doing wrongdoing, you might think you want to change, but actually it's easier to stay with other people that do the same, so you don't feel so bad about yourself, you know. They're not going to challenge you. And there's actually a rule in the Vinaya kind of to prevent that, which means that if two people have the same breach of their training rule precepts, trying to find different language, they should confess to someone who doesn't have that. So if Venerable Upekkhā kept her chocolate too long and I also did, and we confessed to each other, then no one else knows. We're just like, I mean, it's fine, right? In that case, it's totally fine because it's just a small thing. It's not intentional. But say if we were going to do that all the time, I tell you what, every week we can keep it longer, or like we can keep it longer every month, and we'll just confess together so no one else has to know. So there's something there to prevent that. So you always you should find someone who doesn't have the same as you, so that it's you can't conceal. That's the point. Yeah. In the past usually means previous lives. Do you think you might have had contact with your fellow monastics and people close to you in previous lives?
Probably.
We can't say for certain, because even if we could, we're not allowed to. But Yes. I think for me it's a no-brainer. I mean, even before I came across Buddhism, I thought it was pretty obvious that we've lived many times and that we've all met. Some people you just know you've met before. I mean, I have a best friend. We were born in the next room to each other, 8 hours apart, and we met when we were 4, and she's still my best friend, and she's, you know, alongside me and everything. And I mean, we knew even at a young age that we must have been kind of together a lot before, because we're just, you know, on a wavelength. Yeah, and we're teachers, and we always joke about that as well. How many lives have we been like Indian sadhus, traipsing around with our bare feet and washing our face in the Ganga?
Matted locks.
Matted locks. Yeah, so yeah, I do think so. Yeah, but it doesn't again mean fate, right? It doesn't mean that, say you're with somebody and it's not a very wholesome relationship, you have to say, oh well, we've been together in past lives, so we're stuck together now. That's not the case either. You know, just because you've been something to someone before doesn't mean anything like kind of woo-woo. You may or may not have more karma, more learning to do with that person now. Now we're different people, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, doesn't really matter. But it is funny, isn't it, how we just you know, we have that feeling with some people that it's so natural and so easeful to be around them, and there's hardly anything to explain. It's really great. Is that related? It's very true. It helps to serve others with a good intention. It can show the blind spots in oneself. Yeah. Yeah. Erica says, when I quit drinking in college, it basically cut my social circle in half. Losing those friends were the only thing, losing those friends where the only thing we had in common was taking alcohol, I guess. Yeah, isn't it interesting? And sometimes we have to kind of do that on the path, because if you really want to follow this path, you can't really be drinking along the way. Even though the lay teachers sometimes do, actually. It surprises me. Kind of senior lay teachers still having wine. But yeah, that's right. Sometimes we have to cut our losses, even if it was unintentional, and then it does show whether there's a real bond. Sometimes when you do that, like in the case of my best friend, I started meditating before she did, and she just wanted to know what it's all about. She thought, well, if she's into it, it must be something I'd be interested in too. So she came to Nepal and she also meditated, did a retreat. And yeah, I was vegetarian, and then she became vegetarian. Now she's vegan, and I've actually started having to eat meat because of my tummy condition. So yeah, I think some of the time, if they're real friends and if there's really some connection there and some respect, then you can influence them in positive ways, and vice versa. Yeah. And yeah, you know, when you lose friends or you lose partners or you lose whoever it is, even teachers, I guess, although that's a dread for me, someone else is going to come along in your life that you can't even imagine it yet, but there's going to be other support, there's going to be wisdom, there's going to be, you know, other kind of gifts that life will bring. So sometimes there has to be an absence before it can fill up with something even more nourishing. Might not feel like it at the time. Yeah. Shall I keep going? Yeah. So this is more ways that we unite with those who are similar. So now we get into the ethical precepts. Those who destroy life come together and unite with those who destroy life. Those who take what's not given come together and unite with those who take what's not given. I might do the ... Who engage in sexual misconduct, who speak falsehood, who indulge in wine, liquor, and intoxicants, come together and unite with those who indulge in intoxicants. Those who abstain from the destruction of life come together and unite with those who abstain from the destruction of life. Who abstain from taking what's not given, from sexual misconduct, from false speech, from wine, liquor, and intoxicants, come together and unite with those who abstain from all of the above, ending with intoxicants. It's also about how we get influenced, because we can not be taking intoxicants, but then we can like start socializing more or being around other people who do, and we get the peer pressure coming in. And then it continues around the noble path. Those of wrong view come together and unite with those of wrong view. Those of wrong intention, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong endeavor, let's say. That's Ajahn Brahm's translation of effort. Wrong mindfulness and wrong samadhi, I'll say, come together and unite with those of wrong samadhi. It's translated as concentration, but actually that's not how you get into samadhi, by screwing your mind tight. Those of right view, so this is now the Eightfold Path, the proper one, the Noble Eightfold Path. Those of right view come together and unite with those of right view. Those of right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort or endeavor, right mindfulness, and right samadhi or stillness come together and unite with those of right stillness. So that's taken from the Samyutta 14. I'm not sure which one that is. Various verses from that sutta, from that section in the Samyutta Nikaya. Very nice Pali text to own, actually, because all the suttas are together in themes, so you can really delve deeply into particular subjects. So, and I guess this is again sequential in a sense, right? We start off with having those kind of shameless attitudes, the lack of faith, etc. Then we start to have like the wrong conduct because of that, because right view and, you know, kind of a sense of confidence in the beginning. And yeah, hiriotapa, like moral caution, moral, what do I usually call that? Moral, it's shame and fear, isn't it? No. Hiriotapa. Yeah, moral conscience and moral caution I like for those. Yeah. So it starts that way, and then we start to like actually do things that are unskillful. So it becomes stronger and manifests as action. And then of course we're not on the Eightfold Path. So when the sealer's not there, none of the rest is there either. Yeah. And it's the importance, isn't it, of having kalyana mittas, having other people walking the same path. And the Buddha actually says in that sutta where Ananda asks him why, is having spiritual friends the half of the holy life? And the Buddha said, no, don't say that. It's 100%. And one of the reasons he gives is that because beings who have those kalyana mittas are expected to walk on the Eightfold Path. They're expected to do that because you're so influenced by others. So this is why it's so key. And it all ties into non-self because we're conditioned, right? This is nothing but conditioning, this whole thing that we experience and wrongly interpret as a self is actually just a whole bunch of conditioned processes. So we need new conditioning in order to change the whole program and to start following a different route. Basically the route out of samsara, that's the Eightfold Path. It's like the Eightfold Path takes you over.
It's quite a game changer if you think, gosh, is it that easy?
Yeah, right.
With good people. And
you have to do it a lot, don't you?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the only thing, because you did say, you can be expected to walk the Eightfold Path, but you still got to actually walk the Eightfold Path.
Right.
You can be expected to, but you got to.
Right.
You probably will, but you still got to,
just because you
put all those things in place. And I mean, the point is you're more likely to, and you won't really have much choice but doing that in the end. Especially if you're in a monastery somewhere, there's nothing else to do, right? I mean, you kind of have to, but it's just that you don't know how long it's going to take. It doesn't mean it's going to happen this lifetime, but it does mean it will happen eventually. So yeah, this is why just stick with the wise, you know, stick with your good friends, like see them as much as you can.
Yeah.
They don't have to be enlightened teachers. I mean, just fellow practitioners and people that can share the Dhamma and, you know, come to places like the new monastery in Norway that's going to happen, and the Anukampa Buddhist Vihara or Bhikkhuni Vihara. Not sure if it should be Buddhist Vihara or Bhikkhuni Vihara. I thought Buddhist, now I think Bhikkhuni. Anyway, it's for everyone. It's for everyone. So it just reminds us, you know, what's important in life. It's not like you're going to meet a bunch of saints, but you're going to meet people that are pretty committed to being, you know, to moving that direction. And can also show you where you're a little bit stuck, hopefully. It also lines up with the Sappurisa Sevana, Sevana Chabalanam, being one of the factors of, I dare say, stream entry. Sappurisam.
It's associating with the
Sevana.
Associating with the
it's not actually one of the factors of stream entry, but what is the word of another is one of the necessary factors, like paritagosa is one of the factors that's necessary for stream entry, and yoniso manasikara. So there's these two things that have to be there for stream winning to happen. One is the word of another. Paritagosa means the word of another, and it means the word of the wise. And the yoniso manasikara is like the work of the mind that goes to the cause of things, to the root of things. So again, you could say that's a consequence of having heard the teachings of the Buddha or any wise person who's already a stream winner. Yeah. I got a lot out of Upekkhā's words, to be more gentle with myself. It has stuck with me for 2 weeks now. Thank you.
Yay! Yay!
There you go. If you hadn't come to England, if you hadn't said something in the Sutta class, it's amazing. You only had to say sometimes one thing and it has these consequences. Yeah, there's all kinds of lists. I don't know where that is. I mean, it's not exhaustive, you know. Obviously, if you take any of those out, you're not going to be a stream winner, but you could add many more. You can just add the noble paths, right? I mean, yeah. So associating with good people, listening to the Dhamma, same, because you associate with good people so that you can hear the Dhamma. Yoniso manasikara, of course, and practicing the Dhamma, of course, yeah, as a consequence again of listening to the Dhamma. I mean, there's many things that are needed, right? You need the faith. You need to listen to the Dhamma, but then you need the faith and confidence in that Dhamma to arise in order to practice.
That's another list that starts with
there's just, I mean, I think rather than trying to exact particular list, just look inside and ask yourself, you know, what is it that's perhaps weaker in me? Like, what is it that I need? What are my strengths? What is it that's weak? I mean, in that way, it's helpful to have a list, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It can help, but eventually you have to look for yourself.
Yeah, but it does help you to locate. That's what was missing.
But then practicing the Dhamma, you see, we all think we're practicing the Dhamma, but that's the bit that's subtle, isn't it? It's subtle. Eightfold Path, I just say go to that. Because that's really how you practice the Dhamma. Some people think practicing the Dhamma is just meditation, but it's more than that. Yeah.
One-fold path.
Yeah. One-fold path. So we're almost out of time. We've got through a few there, which is lovely, but I'd really like to open for comments and questions. You've been very quiet. I don't know that we've heard anyone's voice. Is that because it's two bikinis or we talk too much? It's a note session. But it'd be really nice to hear someone's voice. Any comments or questions or disagreements, or we'll ask you some. Where can you identify that you're weak in practice or maybe strong? Are there some factors that you think could be practice more. You need to listen to the Dhamma more. Here we go. Kedwin's raised their hand.
Kedwin, can I ask you to unmute, please?
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, okay, so I have a question about, I heard you say the person who was shouting in your face. And I have this happen to me with fair frequency from different people. And I was wondering, when you said that, I was thinking, how does a monastic respond to have someone shouting in their face? And part of my wondering about this with people in my community is that I have not yelled back at them. But there's a part of me that wonders, if I don't say anything like it's not okay to speak to me in that manner or something, I want to find something that would help them come back to their heart and not encourage that behavior by just being, I don't want to just be passive, because I feel like that does not support them.
Yeah, that's true. And it's compassionate to try and find ways that you can, let them know the impact. I think the danger is like that if we do it at the time, it's going to most probably be fueled by agitation at the very least, if not sheer reactivity. To me personally, when it happened, and I mean, just to say, as a monastic, we're all different. Our conditionings are all different. So, it's just like saying as a layperson, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you wear it, we all would react differently. So I just was kind of like, I just froze, really. I just froze because I was like kind of shocked. But I wasn't scared. I was just kind of shocked. And then afterwards felt like, oh my goodness. And I never did say anything. Maybe I just didn't feel it was really worth it because it was once. But if it would continue, then I think I would try and find a time that I wasn't feeling upset or angry about it, and to actually just say, this has happened a few times now. I'm really concerned because it does have an impact on me. It feels this, I feel this. Not in a judgmental way, not by you, kind of, but just how you feel. I feel anxious, and I feel concerned, I feel overwhelmed or whatever. And it's got to change. I don't want to be spoken to this way. I don't know if you're in the position, if someone's shouting to actually ask how you can support them, but it might be that they need to find help from someone else to stop it happening. But yeah, I think to tell them how you feel, because this gives people a chance to actually empathize.
You were coming in and out.
Okay, did you miss something?
Yeah, the last couple sentences that you said, I couldn't quite make it out.
So I think the important thing is to let them know the effect it has on you, because that gives people a chance to empathize, and then to perhaps, kind of realize that their actions do have effects. And they might also, if you use words that are not blaming them for the feelings, they might recognize that emotion and realize, no, that's not a nice feeling, and try to change. And sometimes if they are doing it at the time, I do think it'd be okay just to say, stop, this is not okay. And maybe even put your hand like a stop, I mean, I'm not particularly good at this, but stop, and then just walk away, no. But to actually shout back at that time, or to try and, say they shouldn't be doing it at that time, won't work, I think. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I was actually, it's usually in my van, and I don't roll down my window. So I was actually thinking about printing up signs ahead of time. Okay. So that I don't have to think of the words in the moment, but I could just put the sign up saying,
good idea. This is really not okay. Yeah. That's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
Thank you.
Ellen has a question or comment.
Yeah, Alan, can I ask you to unmute, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a personal experience. I came home from being in Thailand a couple of weeks ago. I was with Ajahn Nito in Ajahn Ganha's temple in Thailand, and I was there for just 2 weeks, and I was at the temple for 1 week, and it was so great. Even though it's hard at the beginning of a short retreat, the mind is very busy, and it takes some days to settle in. And the plan was to spend the last week on the beach because of my sort of seasonal disorder. I wanted just some beach and swimming and so on. So in the beginning, I was looking much forward to that. And in the end, I didn't really want to leave, but I did it anyway. And the irony was I went to like a luxury hotel on the beachfront, and it was beautiful and everything. And it was not as good as being at the temple because, so in hindsight, I wish I'd stayed the whole 2 weeks at the temple instead of going to the beach. But that's how the mind works, I guess. You always want the grass is greener on the other side. But it's so nice to see that, how inspired the mind can get from being in that community. And Ajahn Ganha's community, the people there are so nice and helpful, and it's very touching to be a part of it, and very helpful for my own practice to get inspiration from that. So I would encourage anyone to try to go for a retreat at a temple somewhere for like a week or 2 or 3 or even longer, because it's very good for the practice, in my opinion.
Super. Yeah. So you notice that the happiness of inspiration and the happiness of virtue, etc., and the happiness of meditation too is higher than the happiness of sunbathing. We need to get you a deck chair in the Ajahn Ganha's monastery. Then you can have your medicine for the sad disorder, seasonal affective disorder. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's sometimes we have to do these experiences to know through experience, right? And then next time you have a craving for the beach, you'll remember. Yeah, wonderful. Mudita, you've been there.
I've been there as well, and just to meet Ajahn Ganha, I highly recommend it to everybody, because he's full lot of metta, a lot of metta. He throws lolly. I mean, it sounds silly, but it's just that's his I don't know,
way of showing metta.
Yeah,
yeah, throwing sweets to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's quite a good way to show metta.
It's really nice.
Great. So I think everything is, yeah, people have put some very nice Sutta links there, and also linked to Ajahn Ganha's place. That's wonderful. This community is very supportive. Thank you, everybody. It's so lovely to see those responses and those links, especially for Kedwin, actually. Yeah. Yeah, because the Buddha's not just like, yes, put up with it. I mean, there's some instances where he says you have to avoid people if you can. I mean, obviously you can't always, but it's compassion to ourselves as well as everyone else. And I think your point, Kedwin, about, not wanting them to keep on harming themselves as well is really important.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I like that note to end on from Ellen. That was really lovely to hear about your trip, and I look forward to see you in Norway. By the way, I mean, I haven't got a newsletter out yet, but we are, myself and Ajahn Nito are teaching a retreat in Norway in April. We put it on our social media, but I just haven't had the chance to write a newsletter. I will, but not yet, maybe in a couple of weeks. But for anyone who wants to know, I don't know if you have the link there, Ellen, and you're welcome to post it anywhere else.
To mention any of your other teaching?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of other teaching coming up. So there is
London Insight.
London Insight. Thank you. Do you want to do it?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a London Insight Day retreat around preparing the mind for the natural breath, because you have to make titles. So I don't know. Preparing the mind for the natural breath really means like everything that comes before samadhi in the gradual training. And then maybe a little bit about how to, you know, be gentle with the breath. And that's in London in person on the 19th. Then and then the following week, online retreat for Gaia House about cooling and guarding the senses, something like that. And that's more about like the part of the gradual training around sense restraint, but also like kind of cooling the senses. Like it's two parts. One part is like how to use the senses in ways when you're active, you know, in ways that cause wholesome states to increase. And the other one is more like in retreat when you just calm it down. So there's some nice similes from the Buddha that I'll bring in. Yeah, there's still some places left on the retreat in Norway. That's 7 days, and that it looks like a beautiful place. And then we have an Ajahn Brahmali tour in England. He's coming in May for 14 days, and we're going to be all over the place. Me and Venerable Upekkhā and Ajahn Brahmali are going to give a debate in Oxford about gender and in Buddhism and non-self somehow, and we just see what happens. So yeah, 7-day retreat with Ajahn Brahmali. We still have about 6 places left.
Plus a lot of talks.
Plus a lot of talks, yeah. So you can go on our website for that. Would the Norway retreat be online as well? Not sure. No. I think when it's a 7-day, I mean, we don't do it either because it's just too invasive for the participants, I feel. I feel like it's a little bit, but the thing is they'll probably record things, I guess, right? And put it on after. Yeah, so you can still catch up. All the Dhamma is shared freely. So would someone like to say a few words to end? I don't know who's doing it today. Yeah, tomorrow there's no metta meditation. That's right. The next metta meditation is when? Next Saturday.
What date that is?
Yeah. So, Manoli.
Yeah, so today's Sutta discussion is offered on a donation basis in the spirit of generosity. Any contribution you are able to make will be gratefully received and will help to support the day-to-day activities of our vihara and also the development of England's first monastery where women can train towards full bhikkhuni ordination. And I'll put a link in the chat. And if you are capable, you can provide a food dana to venerables by visiting the vihara. And also there are several more ways to get involved, different ways, matching your capabilities, times, locations. By getting into a couple of WhatsApp groups, you can provide either food when there's no bookings made, or you can volunteer for one-off work in vihara or weekly supermarket delivery. So if you are interested in any of those things, you can contact team at anukampa.org and they will provide you more details. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Tomorrow we're having a little trust meeting here with a few people joining, so it's really, really sweet. And Sunday. Yes. Anyway. So what else? That's it. Yeah. Chanting on Wednesday, and we'll see you next week for the suttas. All right. Take care, everybody. Shall we unmute you? Lovely to see you. I especially like to see, all of you, but it's nice to see Erica because we miss you here. Erica stayed for like 5 weeks.